In the annals of American history, the name Libertine Dixon carries a somber note. Known for his marksmanship and hunting prowess, a shadow was cast upon his reputation as he turned his firearm against those he held dear. Born in 1775 to Thomas and Hannah Dixon in Lawrence, Pennsylvania, the Dixon family later relocated to what is now Greene in southern Summit County, Ohio. Today, Greene is a city near Akron, Ohio, but in the late 18th century it was entirely covered by forests. Thomas, the father of Libertine, was among the first settlers in Greene Township, Ohio, arriving before other white settlers. They constructed a cabin on unowned land. The Dixons, known for their nomadic lifestyle, inherited the adventurous spirit of early explorers, seeking change and constantly moving to evade encroaching settlements. Thomas, a weaver by profession, was assisted by his daughter Anne. Together, Thomas and Hannah had 5 daughters: Anne, Mary, Betsy, Jane, and Margaret, and 4 sons: Libertine, Michael, James, and John. A bond with the natural world was deeply ingrained within Libertine, a trait his parents often observed as a kinship with the earth. Upon reaching adolescence, Libertine traded the comforts of his family abode for the companionship of his Native American confidants by the shores of Portage Lakes. Both Libertine and Michael spent significant time residing with the local Indians. Libertine lived among the Delaware Indians for a total of 7 years. However, his time there came to an abrupt halt when he, possibly struggling with mental health issues, had a serious falling out with his closest friend in the tribe. The details of Libertine's actions remain unknown, but they led to a disturbance that resulted in the tribe losing trust in him. During an evening by the fire, an argument broke out, leading one tribesman to draw a knife on Libertine, who fled into the darkness of the forest to save himself. The tribesman chased after him and was nearing him when Libertine stumbled over a log and hit the ground hard. Unable to halt his momentum, the tribesman tripped over the same log, tumbling over Libertine, who was still lying on the ground. The Indian dropped his knife when he fell, and Libertine grabbed it as he got to his feet. He plunged it into the heart of the Native American, killing him instantly. Understanding the consequences of being discovered by the rest of the tribe, Libertine decided to seek refuge in a nearby white settlement. At daybreak, he noticed that his former companions were tracking him. What started as a retreat turned into a perilous pursuit for survival, with his adversaries gaining the upper hand. They relentlessly and closely pursued him. In the end, the chase was so intense that he sought shelter behind a small tree trunk. However, the trunk was not large enough to hide him effectively, and legend says that 7 shots were fired through his clothes. Somehow, in a manner unknown to tradition, he managed to escape. It might have been his speed, but regardless, he made it back to his father's cabin transformed, harboring deep resentment towards his former friends and becoming a fierce enemy to all Native Americans from that point on. From then on, he never missed an opportunity to take a life, earning a reputation for being ruthless, if the rumors are to be believed. The legendary tales of Libertine Dixon in Summit County were passed down through oral tradition. Local historians who documented his life in the late 1800s were acquainted with his descendants for a long time and confirmed their reputable nature. Dixon was responsible for the death of Chief Wampetek at Indian Pond, a location that earned its name from the belief that the spirit of the elderly chief still lingers there. This eerie lake holds a remarkable and mysterious reputation, where even during the darkest of nights, the piercing and haunting war cry of the Turkeyfoot Indians' chief can still be heard echoing through the night air. Before 1812, Libertine got married to a widow, Mrs. Hannah Pelton Culver, and relocated to Tallmadge. In 1812, he enlisted in Captain Real MacArthur's independent company of the Ohio Militia, which set out on foot from Tallmadge Mills. Libertine's military service was exemplary. On April 20, 1813, Major General Wadsworth directed Captain MacArthur's soldiers to defend Fort Stephenson in Lower Sandusky. Initially expecting swift relief, they were only instructed to carry 5 or 6 days' worth of provisions. However, relief did not arrive promptly, leading to prolonged fatigue, exposure, and hunger among the men. Throughout this time, Libertine Dixon developed an unusual fear of going out at night, worried that the spirits of the Native Americans he had harmed would seek revenge and cause him harm. He started to see flickering lights and convinced himself that they were approaching to retaliate against him. In the 1850s, an elderly resident recalled an incident from 1815 at Tallmadge Mills, specifically at Hart and Norton's mill.
I saw some Indians coming into town and headed to the grocer. Dixon was there. Dixon hightailed it through the back door and headed in the direction of his cabin. He told me that the Injuns were chasing him, but if they wanted to find him, they'd have to search for him in the woods. Libertine left to get his gun, ammunition, and dried venison before heading deeper into the forest. Libertine was a strange character, but similar to many other old Indian hunters, he cherished his gun and talked to it as if it were a dog. He called his rifle Starling, and after firing off a shot, he would yell, "Starling spoke!" I stuck around town and I saw Dixon came back in the direction of the store. He paused and told me,
I headed into the woods and shadowed 'em like honey on a comb until they scattered. I followed them while staying out of sight. They sure scoured the woods for me. They gave up and headed down to Old Portage. One of 'em stopped a ravine near the Big Falls, right where the Big Cuyahoga goes through that gully. He was hanging by an arm around a hemlock over the cliff. I came up behind a large chestnut, and Starling spoke. The Injun just leaped to the rocky bank below, falling some 40 feet. I climbed down to take a gander at him, and I saw his lack of interest in his gun and things, so I took him.
While hunting at Long Lake, Libertine Dixon came across an Indian fishing in a birch bark canoe. Dixon hid behind a tree and shot at the Native American, who let out a loud cry and fell into the lake. As the smoke dissipated, Dixon saw another Indian approaching the lake's shore. Upon witnessing the situation, the second Indian fled the scene and escaped. Libertine, much like the experienced Indian hunters of the past, took pleasure in sharing his tales of adventure. While it's challenging to gauge the level of exaggeration, 2 centuries ago, Green Coventry, Middlebury, Akron, and the region that would eventually become Cuyahoga Falls were rich with legends about the iconic Native American hunter from bygone eras. Most Native Americans departed the Ohio country and moved westward after siding with the British during the conflict. This decision soured relations with the Western reservers, leading to fatal consequences for returning Indians in the Cuyahoga River's gorge and glens, as well as across the Cuyahoga Valley. In 1815, Captain Deland Mills came across a group of 5 Native Americans camping in Summit County near the Glens, not too far from the Big Falls in present-day Cuyahoga Falls. His rangers successfully took out 4 of them with the first shot. The 5th, a swift runner, escaped to the west. Small groups of Indians returned to Richfield, Cuyahoga Falls, and other areas around the Cuyahoga River and the Portage Path as late as 1817, but did not stay for long, except for those who were killed immediately by lingering self-called Indian hunters. Until the most recent generation, young individuals would rather take a longer route than cross Indian Pond in the dark, as they dreaded encountering the eerie figure in the birch-bark canoe silently gliding over the tranquil lake. Similarly, some are reluctant to explore the glens of the Cuyahoga River to avoid hearing the chilling death cry from a century ago echoing through the cliffs and the surrounding woods. Libertine Dixon passed away on August 22, 1828, in the midst of what he detested almost as much as the natives, encroaching white settlers invading his forest.